Hi everyone, my name is Clarice G. Millares, and today I'm going to discuss with you the Lenneberg critical period hypothesis. The critical period hypothesis states that the first few years of life is the crucial time in which an individual can acquire a first language if presented with adequate stimuli, and the first language acquisition relies on neuroplasticity. So, Lenneberg argued that the language acquisition needed to take place between age 2 and puberty. According to Porter, he explained that the optimal time to learn a second language is between age 3 and 5, or as soon thereafter as possible, and certainly before the onset of puberty. So, Kanji posits key elements of a critical period in L2 acquisition. We have here 4 elements. Number 1, clearly specified beginning and endpoints for the period. So, as what I've said kanina, Lenneberg suggested puberty. So, others have followed suit. So, according to Johnson and Newport, they considered age 15 to be the end of the critical period. So, as noted previously, Pinker considered to begin at age 6 and end at puberty. So, for the present purposes, assume that the critical period hypothesis is set by puberty and ends at age 15. So, in any event, any claim to a critical period for L2 acquisition should be specific about an endpoint. The second one is well-defined decline in L2 acquisition at the end of the period. So the ability to learn things declines with age, such as learning to ride a bicycle, yet it would not be stated that there is a critical period for cycling. A general decline in learning is not strong evidence for a critical period for L2 acquisition. The appeal of a critical period hypothesis lies in its specificity. That is its ability to target specific learning. So the mechanism that get turned off at a given age. The third one is the evidence of a qualitative differences in learning between acquisition within and outside the critical period. So a critical period is assumed to be caused by the shutting down of a specific language learning mechanism. Therefore, any learning that happens outside of the critical period hypothesis must be the result of alternative learning mechanisms. For example, if certain grammatical errors could be found among adult learners that are never found in child learners, or if child learners were able to learn specific aspects of the language that adults could not learn, then this would be strong evidence for a critical period. Lastly, robustness to environmental variation inside the critical period. So another attraction of the critical period hypothesis is that there is a threshold level of exposure with uniform outcomes. So even with considerable environmental variation, the environment might play a larger role beyond that period, and the outcomes would become more variable. Next is Lenneberg's critical period hypothesis explains rather rigid stages of first language acquisition to second language acquisition. So we know that the first language acquisition typically occurs in infancy and early childhood. So the critical period hypothesis explains that as a child proceeds in life, his ability to acquire a second language declines, and that acquisition and learning of a second language must be introduced early on. So the earlier the better. So Lenneberg may be somewhat true about the critical or sensitive period on first language acquisition, but clearly it is not really necessary on second language acquisition. So Snow and Hofnagel-Hoelli in Parsley, based on extensive research, they claim that adults and young adults acquired a second language and had a better understanding of it as opposed to children in the age associated with the critical period hypothesis. So this could possibly be due in part to proactive interference. So a proactive interference, this is the knowledge of language acquisition in one language may aid learning in the second language. So this leads us to Cummins interdependence hypothesis. Next, we have the Cummins interdependence hypothesis. So this is figure 2, the Cummins iceberg model of language interdependence. So knowledge of how first language or mother tongue is acquired lends understanding of how second language is acquired. Jim Cummins, in his language interdependence hypothesis, explained that all languages have common underlying proficiency, CUP. Languages may appear to have different surface structures, but their deep structures are common. Hence, proficiency in the first language leads to proficiency in second language. This hypothesis also represented as dual iceberg. So it explains that every language contains a surface structure or features that may be different, like phonology, morphonology, and syntax. However, beneath those surface structures are proficiencies that are common across languages. So he differentiated ideas about the two principal continuum of second language development in a simple matrix. The BICS describes the development of conversational fluency. So the BICS is basic interpersonal communicative skills. And the second language is CALP, describes the use of language in decontextualized academic situations. So this is a cognitive academic language proficiency. So the implication of Kamen's interdependence hypothesis explains greatly how one language can be transitioned to another language and another language. So teachers must focus on the common underlying proficiency of the languages in order to successfully transfer in one language to another.